to the Inspire Wealth podcast with Prof, where we dive into the world of real estate investing and wealth building strategies. I'm your host, Mallory Meehan. I'm a real estate professor, attorney, and seasoned investor here to guide you through the ins and outs of creating wealth through real estate. If you're looking to take your real estate knowledge to the next level, don't forget to subscribe to stay up to date with our latest episodes and offerings. Welcome to another episode of Inspire Wealth. I am Mallory Meehan, your host, aka Prof, and I'm joined with me by Alisha Wilson. Alisha, how are you today?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, thank you for coming on the show. You are very much like me, which is I love finding people like unicorns because I call myself a unicorn. So it's great to find a fellow unicorn. So Alisha, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, kind of how you got into this real estate investing journey?
Sure. So whenever I was young, my mother always talked about how it's really important to own your own property. She was not big on renting. She thought it was a waste of money. So that was one thing she instilled in me at a very young age is as soon as you're old enough, as soon as you have the money, go buy yourself a house. And that's what I did. When I was 25 in the early 2000s, I bought my first house. It was a little $108,000 cookie cutter, house in a very small neighborhood. And that was my first foray. And back then, I always had roommates that would rent out the rooms to help me pay the mortgage. And I really didn't have much of a mortgage payment when I was collecting money from my friends.
Right.
And I just thought, wow, this is powerful. I'm living in this house that I own and other people are paying for it. I think that gave me the bug. Yeah. So it would be a while before I actually did any investing, but I did buy several houses, between that time until 2018 when I actually bought a house for investment purposes. And that was in Austin. That was before the big boom where everything in Austin became so unaffordable. I bought a cute little 3-2 about 10 miles from downtown for $250,000.
Wow.
And I still have the house today, and it's been filled with a tenant ever since we purchased it. And, we have some really good appreciation on it. And that was the only home that I purchased that was older. It was in 1965. I learned. So since then, all of my acquisitions have been new construction.
It's funny. Well, one, you were like ahead of your time with the house hacking. So I love that. And number two, with the aging, you said 1965. So here in central Pennsylvania, my house will be celebrating its 100th birthday in 2 years. So I know a thing or two about older homes and the problems that they tend to come up with. So my home, whenever I bought it, we were doing some construction work on the bathrooms, found out that we had knob and tube. We had all, like the plumbing wasn't updated and, things behind the wall that you can't really get during an inspection. And yeah, it cost us a lot of money we basically had to put a whole new electric panel in, new plumbing. We had our boiler explode on us. So we had to put in all new heating and cooling. We've had to replace the water heater a couple times, like all the things. So I am on your side when it comes to let's do new construction. Okay, so you're doing new construction. Tell me a little bit about your strategy and maybe how you're helping investors that are still like new to the game and they're thinking about how they can get in.
Sure. So whenever I initially started the thought about new construction, it was because of all of the pain and headache from this first investment property where, like you, we had to replace so many CapEx expense items. And we were just, it was an alligator. At the time I was thinking, this is an alligator property. I'm losing money. And of course, my husband, he thinks long-term and he said, yes, but look at all of our appreciation. And, I know he's right. I know that in time, we're not even going to remember the few $1,000s each year that we had to spend the first 3 years, it's CapEx expenses. And so I try to just put it in the back of my mind. But because of that, I started thinking, I wonder if it's possible to invest in new construction. And it is possible if you have 20 to 25% down. It is possible if you are willing to forego, future benefits, so to speak. I always compare this to the marshmallow test. So there was a psychologist that conducted this test with children, and essentially the deal was you can have one marshmallow right now, or if you wait a little bit of time, you can get two. And so I think about that with the new construction strategy. We can go ahead and give you, an old house now that's cheap. You don't have to put much money into it right now to get into it. Or we can give you this nice new house that you will have to put some money into, but 15 or 20 years from now, you can potentially double or even triple, the value and have appreciation and a lot more money than you would if you bought this very cheap house that you didn't put much money into to get into. And so I kind of think about it in those terms. And so I'm a wait and get two marshmallows type of girl. So the new construction strategy really works in my mind the best for me. I'm all about plugging away and waiting for my reward. And so
Yeah.
that's what I'm doing.
I love that. No, and that makes a lot of sense. And I guess where exactly are you doing these new construction deals? Because I think it also really depends on your demographic and like what are the expectations of your tenants, and then that's also going to correlate to your rent. So where exactly are you kind of focused on?
So the first new construction property that my husband and I purchased was in Canton, Mississippi, and this is just outside of Jackson, Mississippi, in a suburb. And this is an area that's really traditionally more, it caters more to investors that want cash flow. And, normally people will get older houses in Jackson and have, five, 800, maybe even $1,000 a month in cash flow. But the new construction part of it, you can have a brand new house and a little bit of cash flow. So the one that we bought was a 4-bedroom, 2-bath, $269,000, and a beautiful home on a very large lot. And we are renting it right now for $2,500 a month, and our payment is somewhere around 1585. So we're getting really decent cash flow for a new construction home.
Yeah.
Insurance and taxes are very cheap. So for right now, we're okay with that cash flow. Plus, we have a new property, so we don't have any capex. I mean, the only thing that I have to do is maintain the lawn and pest control services, but everything else is the tenant's responsibility. The second, third, and fourth properties we bought were all in Texas. One of them was one we already had. That was the 1965 house. We still have it. But we bought two more new construction, one in Lockhart, Texas, which is about 30 minutes south of Austin, and one in Converse, Texas, which is essentially the north side of San Antonio.
Hmm.
And both of those deals were 25% down, but we were able to get in with a builder who caters to investors, and he was able to provide, a lender who was able to give us a 4.25% 10-year ARM on, it's a duplex actually. Each side, pays $1,750 a month. Our payment on that's about $3,600. So, we're not looking at a ton of cash flow, a few $100 every month after the property management and all of that comes out. But again, our mortgage is being paid, and someone else is giving us our equity. We're not having to do any work. We parked 25% of the down payment into the house, but it's like a bank with interest that continuously grows and grows and grows. And so we were fine with that.
Yeah.
The Lockhart house, same thing. Well, not the same thing. It's a single family home. It's a 4-2, like the one in Mississippi. That one, I was able to get a really good discount from, it's a D.R. Horton home. We negotiated from 320 down to 300, and then I added like some blinds and a garage door opener. So it was 301, 185. And on that one, we're getting 2175 a month in rent. The payment's like 1989. So again, not a ton of cash flow, but our mortgage is being paid. the tenant's responsible for all the expenses. And I have not had any issues with any of those houses. No capex, no maintenance, nothing. So it's a different world compared to the old house that we've spent thousands of dollars on in capex.
Yeah, and it's
So
always like the horror story when you hear like, the tenant's calling because the toilet's running, it won't shut off, or, the refrigerator's on its last leg, and then, it just kind of snowballs from there. So that's nice that you don't have any CapExes for sure. So I guess how did you get in touch with these builders, or how did you start the relationship building to even find some of these opportunities?
I'm always looking on Zillow. Now that I'm a licensed realtor, I look on MLS, and they have certain, as you probably know, you're a realtor, they have a new home source or new builder source where you can look at all the different builders in your area. And I just started calling people, getting on the phone, talking to people, and saying, hey, this is my niche client. I want to deal with people who don't have time to do the BRRRR strategy, that don't have time to do flips, that don't have time to manage a property. They just want something new and turnkey. What kind of deals do your in-house lender offer that, for an investor? What can you do for me? And there's actually a couple of builders in the Central Texas area, just outside of Austin, that are offering 3.5%, a 3.5% interest rate for a 10-year loan, and a 4.25% interest rate on a 30-year loan to investors with 25% down. To
Oh,
me, that is incredible. And it's the same situation. You're going to probably have, $200-300 a month in cash flow, but you're not going to have capex probably. The builder, warranties the home the first year. So if anything goes wrong, they're on it.
mhm,
It's just collect your rent and go. You may have a property management company that you have to pay. Or if you're so inclined, I self-manage my properties, and I offer that for my clients. I'll show you what I do, and you can self-manage yourself. I manage the one in Mississippi. We just bought one in Colorado on August 15th. We just got back from closing on that property. It is now fully rented. I did all of that myself remotely. And it can be done. And that's what I want to help other people with. I want to show them this is how I do it. And you can do it too. And I will help you. I'll guide you, every step of the process, because I want people to be able to have the wealth that I know my husband and I are going to have in 15, 20 years down the road when we're ready to retire.
mhm. Yeah, so I'm curious, are you doing any cash out refis with any of your properties right now, or are you just kind of riding out the current loans and, keeping up with, I'm assuming you had pretty favorable terms for these properties that you bought. So what's your strategy kind of if you're looking for additional capital for future deals, or tell me more about that?
Yes. So the one in Austin, we have about $200,000 in equity in that one. And I think what we're going to do, a cash out refinance right now doesn't make a lot of sense because the interest rates are so high.
Yeah.
We have a 3.5% 30-year mortgage on that property. So we're kind of trapped in that right now. But one thing we thought about is getting a HELOC, because that property is on a third of an acre lot in Austin proper, and there's a ton of room behind this house. And so we are actually thinking about getting a HELOC and maybe having, an, I think it's into the box or some sort of ADU added to the backyard, so that we can increase our ability, to make money on that particular property. And the property taxes are going to go up, but it's not going to be so significant that it would wipe out the additional money that we could make on it.
Mhm.
So that's what we're looking into right now, so that we can use that equity, so it's not just sitting there idle.
Right. No, I think that's a great idea. And I mean, especially if you can use and utilize some of your existing properties, and you don't have to go out and find a new deal. You don't have to go through closing costs. You don't have to go through underwriting and all those other things. So no, that's a smart idea. Now, I'm curious. You told me that you were in South Florida for a while. Are you specifically staying out of Florida? Are you open to Florida? Because I know you probably know a lot about insurance and, especially the Florida market, but I'd love to hear your take on that.
Yes. So my husband and I actually lived in South Florida from 2012 until we recently moved in 2022. And I actually practiced law there. I practiced insurance defense. So I actually represented insurance companies being sued by policyholders who had property damage claims. So hurricane claims, wind claims, all of the things that can happen to a house. And while I was there, I knew that the insurance market was a little nuts, if I can say that, a term of art. I've never seen such high premiums anywhere I had ever lived. And but I knowing real estate is a magic thing and it's really great for you. We bought a house in Tamarack, Florida. It's in Broward County, South Florida, and we were in that house for about 5 years, and we wanted something bigger in 2019. In hindsight, it was a genius decision because COVID happened 4 months after we bought this other house that was much bigger. But in 5 years, we had about $100,000 in equity in the first house that we bought, and we were able to move that money to a much larger house, but still have a payment similar to the smaller house that we had been in for 5 years. And then we stayed in that house for a few years, kind of did a live-in flip. And at the time in 2022, when we put it up on the market, we were paying $7,700 a year in insurance. And right when we sold it, we had gotten our renewal that said we were going to have to pay $9,800 a year for our premium. And honestly, that was kind of one of the main reasons I thought, you know what, I will never invest here because the insurance is insane. I mean, to me, it's more of an insult than the high property taxes in Texas, because Florida is like not as high. The property taxes aren't as high, but they're not that much lower. And then when you have to couple that with a $10,000 a year premium, it just gets out of control really, really quickly. So, I personally I don't go into Florida for investment. It was great having a home there. When we sold our second home, we had close to $300,000 in our pocket after all was said and done, after only a little over 3 years.
Yeah.
And we used that to buy, all of the houses that we now have, all these brand new construction homes. We seeded that money from the sale of that South Florida house. I knew I wanted to do more investing, but the money part was the part that was a conundrum for me at first.
Yeah.
And then, you have an asset, you have a house to sell.
Exactly. So you're also an attorney, and so you probably think about ownership a little bit differently than maybe the, regular person on the street. What are some of the benefits or some of the pieces of education that you provide your clients with to kind of really help them understand why real estate is such a powerful investment and how it can actually help them build long-term wealth?
Well, for me, because attorneys, they tend to make a little bit more money than the average occupation. And so for me, it was sort of finding a way to help shelter some of the money I would normally be spending on taxes. And I have not yet done this, but I think I'm going to have an opportunity with the most recent acquisition that we purchased to try to do oh my goodness, it's a midterm rental, and we basically furnish the whole thing. And the word is escaping me right now. It's a study. Essentially, you can take some of your tax liability off of your plate by using this study. The word is escaping me, Mallory. I know you know what I'm talking about.
Midterm rental, you're trying to, so is it the real estate professional status or?
No, it's where you essentially take all the depreciation of everything that you.
Accelerated depreciation or
Thank
cost.
you. Yes. Yes. Cost segregation study. Thank you. That was the word that was escaping me.
Yes.
So yes.
Fully furnished, you can, well, I think right now it's 60% you can take as far as the cost of that. And then, at least it's a little bit of a better benefit than just having to depreciate it over the standard life. So
27 and a half years, exactly. Which,
exactly.
that's not a bad thing either. But if you have more depreciation than you can take from the income that you're making in the rental money, you can't do anything with those. You
Right.
can't do anything with those monies until you sell, or so I'm a little nervous to do any kind of short-term rental. I've never done that before, but I have done midterm rental. We did that with our house in Mississippi
Mhm.
when we first purchased it. We had an insurance company contact us to have someone stay in it, and they paid us quite a bit of money, to have that tenant in there. And so that was my first foray into midterm rentals, and I thought, ooh, I can do this. And so this new house that we purchased in Colorado, it's a single family home with a 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom casita over the garage,
Okay.
or ADU is another word for it.
Hmm.
So yeah, so we furnished the 1 bedroom casita, and I just rented it out to a traveling nurse for 3 months.
Nice.
And yeah, so she'll be there for a few months, and then when she leaves, we'll turn it and send it to someone else. But we spent like $10,000 furnishing it, artwork, all the stuff, you know. And so that's going to help us whenever we do the cost segregation study. We can actually use, we can depreciate everything at an accelerated rate, and we can actually offset some of my W-2 income from my attorney job. And so that's super exciting. And then we also have the option, with myself being in real estate, my husband is working on his license. And so we were sort of looking into the real estate professional status as well. But that would be for him because I have a W-2 job. So can't really use the real estate professional status when you have another full-time job.
I
But
think
yeah,
it depends because I am able to use the real estate professional status, but it's because like with my position, I'm teaching at, different times of the day and I can actually, designate a lot of hours and my job kind of overlaps with like, the real
that's
estate
true.
part because I'm basically teaching what I'm doing and like what's happening in my world and what's going on. So I think if you can be creative about figuring out how you can fit that real estate professional status in, because you going to Colorado, the time that you spend going out there, that's counting towards it. Plus, now
Right.
anytime is your property near Denver?
It's in Colorado Springs,
Colorado,
actually.
oh my God, Colorado Springs is great. I have a bunch of friends that live there. So every time you travel out there, guess what? It's a write-off.
Right. Yes.
So every time you go to some of these locations, I don't know how frequently you want to go to Mississippi and like, vacation there. I'm sure Jackson is a wonderful place for those of you who might be from that area, but you know, I think that's also a draw for people, especially people who, don't necessarily understand the power of real estate. Like my husband and I, we went to Key West in December, so in South Florida, and we looked at some properties down there, and
Wow.
we wanted to consider like, okay, if we could buy a property down here, what would it look like? And we got to write the whole trip off.
Exactly. We've done that. We've done that many times. We did it for Mississippi. We're going to do it for Colorado. Um, we actually did it for the first house we bought in Austin because we were living in South Florida at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have gotten some really great write-offs. My husband also owns his own business. He is an insurance appraiser. So we were both in the insurance, we're both in the insurance industry. But yeah, he is able to write things off as well on his business. But for me, I'm still branching out.
Yeah.
The midterm rental to me is a lot more comfortable than trying to do short-term rental. You hear a lot of things about that market dying or not being as lucrative as it used to be. So for me, the midterm rental is a safe space to be because it's not all the way to the extreme of short-term rentals. And it's been fun. You make a lot more money with your midterm rental than you do on the long-term rentals, and it's just a nice little extra type of strategy that you're not just doing the long-term buy and hold.
So
So
I'm curious, how are you finding your tenants for the midterm? Like, do you have a company that's going out there, or do you personally know insurance companies that are actively looking for houses? Or what might somebody, like, let's say, somebody wants to try to do midterm, how can they find those right people who would fit that particular type of space?
So I put this particular unit on Furnished Finder, and it's well, it used to be $99 a year, but of course, when I joined, they've raised the price to $149 a year. So,
Still
so
cheaper
I
than other
actually
platforms.
that is very true. I can't really complain because you are correct. It's much cheaper than others. But Furnished Finder is what I use, and I found a tenant, within a couple of weeks
Oh,
of
nice.
putting it up. And I also do professional photos for every single rental property I have. And I will tell you, I think that that is the key. I've seen some scary stuff on Furnished Finder in Colorado Springs, and the tenant that I ended up with, she told me, "You are the only one bedroom, one bath that's not in a scary, like, dungeon like basement." So that's kind of what my competition was. And
Yeah,
so I thought, I win. I've got their own entry door, their own parking spot right in front of the door.
right.
They don't have to mess with the tenants in the big house. So yeah, she said that the pictures were beautiful, and of course we staged it to look very, very nice too. Very good furniture. Comfortable bed, comfortable couch. Like, those are the two main things that have to be really good luxury type items, because that, I think, is what gets you the reviews and
Like,
makes people like your like your product.
yeah, no, for sure. So you have midterm rentals, you have long-term rentals. I'm curious, like what do the next like 1 to 5 years look like for you, your portfolio, your strategy? What's that all kind of coming into?
So I think what you mentioned earlier about the cash out refinance. I do anticipate doing that, perhaps with the Mississippi property. That one is at a 7% interest rate. We bought that when interest rates were still kind of high,
Mhm.
but the price was just too good to pass up. And in my mind, if I can make it work at a 7%, I'm going to do it all day long, because I know that rates are not going to stay the same forever, and that if I do get a lower rate and I can either refinance or do a cash out refi, I'm going to be in a better position. The $500 a month cash flow might be 800 when I do that. So that one, we're going to look into that. The ones in Texas, we probably will start looking, maybe at the 5-year mark. Those, I like the fact that we have the 25% into them, because I think that if there's any issue with property values coming down anymore, we're somewhat insulated because we have so much of the down payment still into the properties.
Right.
But yeah, and then of course the HELOC for the Austin property, we're definitely going to look into that. I was really just waiting for us to close on
Yeah.
the Colorado property, but the wheels are always turning. I'm always thinking about, okay, what can we do next? It's addicting. Investing is addicting.
It really is, and that's what I always tell people, it's like once you get your first one, and once you get a taste for it, like, then it's just gonna be like, "Okay, let's do more, let's do more." Do you do any partnership or any sort of, like, collaboration with other people? Like, do you find that maybe sometimes investors, are looking for maybe somebody to walk their hand like, hold their hand through it, or what are the type of services that you're offering your clients?
I have not gotten into partnerships yet, but I will entertain that. And I actually have an investor friend. I'm in an investor group. Coach Carson, I don't know if you've ever heard his podcast, but he has a rental property mastery
Mm,
mastermind group. And I'm in that, and I have a friend in there who, she likes to do flips and the Burr strategy. And
mhm.
so we've sort of talked about potentially partnering up in the future. And I'm not there yet, but it is something I'm definitely going to entertain. I also look for properties for her in Central Texas, because she invests in Bastrop, which is about 40-50 minutes away from the Austin area. And so we haven't found anything that works for her yet, but she definitely is open to a potential partnership. Really, what I want to offer my real estate clients is finding them a good new construction home with an interest rate that makes sense for them, where they can get good, good tenants that have access to employers that pay well, and they can get good tenants for 2, 3, 4+ years, and just kind of put their rental property on autopilot. Um, and like I said before, I have access to property management software. I can teach my clients who want to self-manage how to do that. Or I can refer them to good property management companies that are local to their rental properties. I'm working with a client right now in California, and we're going through some of these different new construction communities, and I'm having to show him, here are the types of jobs that your tenants would be able to get. These are the salaries that are being paid to these people. They're going to be able to afford X dollars in rent because they make well over 3 times that with any job that they might get at any of these various employers. We're really lucky. We have Tesla, we have a Samsung semiconductor plant going in just north of Austin in the suburbs. I mean, the suburbs are really filling out right now,
Yeah.
and that's kind of where everyone is migrating because that's where people can afford to live, and it's growing exponentially. And with the interest rates kind of being where they are, with regular buyers and sellers being a little nervous, to me, this is the best time for investors to buy. I mean, what is it Warren Buffett says? Like, when people are, greedy, be fearful, and be greedy when others are fearful. And right now, people are fearful. This is the time. Investors have to be greedy.
Yeah.
And so that's why we've been buying up things left and right.
No, I love that. What kind of property management software do you use?
I use Hemlane. I'm a big spreadsheet person, and I kind of nerd out on the spreadsheets. And
Love
so
that.
I
Spreadsheets too. We could
really are.
literally nerd out together. Like, oh,
Yes, we can.
like we could probably just have hours and hours of conversation.
Yeah, so I basically found I Google searched like every possible property management software out there, and there's been more since I've done my initial research, but I went through and I kind of had my little spreadsheet, put the name of the software and like all the pros and cons in my mind, and I ended up picking the one I thought would fit my personality best.
Mhm.
And it maybe wasn't the most robust at the time, but since I've been with them, they have grown and added the things that I'm always giving them little food for thought, like, hey, have
Yeah,
you thought about doing this? And they listen because they're relatively small compared to the behemoth ones that cost a fortune,
right.
to use. But yeah, they've instituted, DocuSign, that just came out
Okay.
recently.
Awesome.
The financial tab where you can connect to your bank account and it pulls in and does your accounting. So they've done all those things, and so now it's great. Like everything I want, they have included in the software. But I love it. It's easy to use. I just used it to fill the vacancy in Colorado, and it's great. I mean, the software I couldn't live without.
So it does tenant screening. It does kind of like from start to finish, somebody who's like, I have this place. Now what? I need somebody to be in there. And if you want to try, and I always recommend people try to self-manage their first at least couple of properties. And then once you kind of get the feel for it, then once you start to scale, then I would suggest like it's probably best to have a property manager
Yeah,
for, larger than I would say maybe 3 to 5 you could self-manage. But if you have a
yeah.
W-2, even that gets to be, tough. So I want to ask you, I have like two more questions. And so let's say I am a new investor and I come to you and I'm like, I don't know where to start. What questions do you ask your new investors or people who may be interested in investing? What kind of information do they need to get to you? And what kind of research do they need to do for themselves before you can help them?
So I actually have a buyer questionnaire that I send out to my investors, and it's fairly lengthy. I ask them things like, what size home do you intend to purchase? Because I want to know, like, are you interested in 3 to 4 bedrooms? Are you interested in townhomes? Are you interested in duplexes? I ask them price range. What price range do you want to purchase a home in, and how much do you have available to you in cash? If they want to do the new construction route, but they only have $5,000, then there's a mismatch there with their desire and what we can actually make happen. And so I want to know all of these things before I meet with them, so that we can have a really rich discussion about what they may need to do, because I really focus on new construction. That is my niche. I am not the person, if you want to find a flip house, or if you want to do a burst strategy, I'll go look at those houses for you, but that's just not my strategy. That's not what I do. So if you are someone who is interested in that, but you only have $5,000, my advice to you is, hey, why don't you try to sock away a little more money? Maybe talk to your 401k administrator, see if there's a possibility of you using money from that. I try to focus on ways to help them achieve the goal of going into that new construction strategy. Or if they're ready to go and they're like, 100,000 dollars liquid cash, let's go, let's do it. I usually look for homes in the Central Texas area that are 325 and under. And believe it or not, you can find 4-bedroom, 2-bath new construction homes in the outside of the metro Austin area for that price, and they're beautiful, nice homes in really great neighborhoods with HOAs, and most of them will only allow about 10% to be investor buyers. So you're not going to be buying into a community that's going to go downhill because everybody's an investor and they've
Right.
purchased the entire subdivision.
Awesome. Okay, so I like to also ask my guests, are there any books that you're reading, any recommendations that you have for people getting into real estate, or, just general places of information that you found to be helpful?
Sure. So I love bigger pockets. When I first got the investing bug, it was really during COVID, because I was trying to figure out what we were going to do with our South Florida house, because I wanted to come back to Texas.
Hmm.
And so I sort of went down the rabbit hole on bigger pockets, and reading their articles, listening to all their various podcasts. I think On the Market is my favorite. And so bigger pockets, I think, is a great resource to learn. Also, Chad Carson, he wrote Retire Early with Real Estate and The Small and Mighty Real Estate Investor. Both of those books are awesome. I learned a ton reading those. Right now I'm listening to Chris Voss's The Full Fee Agent.
Mm.
So yeah, so there's a lot of different books. And my gosh, my library, Audible and also Kindle, I have so many books that I still haven't gotten to yet. I love reading. And so maybe when I'm 80 years old, I will have finished all of the books in my library.
Yeah.
But those are a few that I think were really helpful to me in the beginning, and help teach me what to do. Because a lot of times when you first start, you're like, where do I even start? Like, how do I even do this? And the very basic elementary steps would be to start looking at homes on Zillow, running numbers. That's how I did it. I started running numbers that way. So I would say, okay, how much is principal, insurance, taxes, insurance? How much is that? Okay, how much rent would I need? And then I started like Googling how much can I rent this property for in this zip code? And it's really that simple to start just running numbers. And when you do that about 100 times in an area that you believe you want to invest, you start to get really good at it. And before you even open a page of a house you see, from the price, like, that's not going to work. I know that 325 number is kind of the magic number, and I know that I have to have an interest rate under 6%,
Yep.
and I know it has to be in a certain area in order for it all to work. And I think that the more you run numbers, the better you get at that, and you start to really understand what is a good deal, whether it be new construction or some other strategy that you want to try.
Yeah, no, that's great advice. I think that I love what you're doing. I think you have a great strategy. I can't wait to continue getting to know you and hopefully creating a long-term relationship as well. So Alicia, thank you again for joining us on the podcast. Listeners, if you want to check Alicia out, how can they get in touch with you?
They can email me, alicia.wilson.realtor@gmail.com. They can go to my property website, or my website for EXP Realty. It's aliciawilson.exprealty.com. And that's Alisha, Alisha. A lot of people spell it with a C. I don't have a C in my name.
Wonderful. Well, we'll put that in the notes below so our listeners can reach out. And if you're looking for property in the Central Texas market, I would say Alicia's your girl. So thank
Thank you.
you. Um, thanks for listening to this episode of Inspire Wealth. Prof, I'm out. And for those who want a more hands-on learning experience, check out our online courses at inspirewealtheducation.com. Whether you're just starting out or looking to expand your investment portfolio, I've created step-by-step guides and resources to help you achieve your financial goals. So hit that subscribe button and let's start building your wealth one episode at a time.